Hey, John, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show. We're really excited to have a chat.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I brought a prop with me today, and it's one of your guys' meat sticks here. If you guys
Love it.
listening are have any video, you guys have by far my favorite meat stick. There's a lot of like beef and grass-fed beef meat sticks out there, and you guys have it's a pork product, and I think it just blows everything else out of the water. In fact, I have a my 1-year-old, who's joined the family now, would actually agree as well. Your guys' pineapple flavor is just like off the charts. And actually, if you look at my office here, the trash underneath, you'll see a bunch of Singing
Mm,
Pastures Rome sticks collected in there.
love
So
to hear
Well,
that.
I got to chime in and say, I told Brant, who handles our like supply chain and procurement, that we're not going to sell any meat sticks at our brand. I told him that a couple of years ago, and then John, uh, just you contacted us about it, and basically you're the only meat stick that got through our filter,
Thank you.
just because of just the quality and the brand, which we want to get into the brand presentation. You guys are doing a fantastic job. So it's inspiring.
yeah, so
Yeah,
the
thank
reason
you.
why we're talking ahead of time, the reason why John, we want to have you on the episode is because there's just very few people who have gone very deep down building a business like you guys have, going deep down the traditional wholesale path and kind of building a CPG brand. That's also a farm. So, we've got very limited experience with this as well. So we thought it'd be fun to get somebody who's in the trenches and can kind of give the audience a little bit of lessons learned for that you guys have come up with and building the business and brand. So maybe to kick things off, um, well, it's always nice to kind of give a hook for anyone who's listening on to this to get a better idea of what you guys do. So you just kind of talk about the business today, what products you guys offer, maybe the scale and size of things. Like, just give us a picture of what the business looks like now.
So I'm going to start out with a slightly personal note, and I
Okay.
found one of my old journals from the year 2012. So not super long ago. And I was going through that, and my goals for the year was to one of them was to make $12,000 farming. So 12 years
$12,000 in
later.
2012. That's
Yeah,
great.
$2,000. Yeah, $12,000 in 2012. That's right. So we're on track to make about $1 million this year. We've got 5 employees, and we're super happy about it. In 2016, when we started the snack stick business, I was doing all the packaging in my basement. We'd had some college interns help us put up our website. I was cold calling a new potential account every day. That was part of my chores. Part of my chores was cold call a new place every day. And then in my little paper notebook, I'd keep what would go on to become a CRM, customer
Yeah.
relations management tool. And I just write it all down, notes and who I called and whether they were hot or cold. I do all that. But I was doing all the packaging in my own basement. And this was after I'd put my kids to bed. And then whatever orders we got every night, I would do two things. I would wash a lot of chicken eggs
Huh.
and put them in cartons. And then I would fill all my orders, that had come in that day. And then, every couple of days, we'd go down to just the regular post office and put everything in either padded envelopes or the flat rate boxes, depending on how far it was going, and ship it out. So that's where we were in 2016. We were doing it that way. About a month ago, I went to visit our co-manufacturer, and they were running our product while we were there. I got to see our product going through the conveyor belts and the pipeline, as we call it. And there were 22 people, packaging Rome sticks
Yep.
at that moment. And
Yep.
that was the moment when just the scale, of what we were doing. We're still not big, you know.
What percentage of that is that, 1 million in revenue, and what percentage is that Rome sticks, the meat sticks?
Yeah, that's $1 million in revenue. It'll probably actually be just a little bit more, like 1.2 by the end of this year.
Yep.
And the vast majority of it is Rome sticks.
Okay.
We continue to sell feeder pigs. or we did up until this year. We sell feeder pigs, we sell barbecue pigs, we sell whole hogs off the farm. We do custom grazing. Right now there's 400 grass-fed lamb on our place and about 20 cows. We also sell salami. Salami is a great thing to work with.
Yep.
And
Yep.
in years past, we would sell the middle meats as frozen product, and we kind of discontinued doing that, and now we're getting back into that.
Yep. Yep.
How many,
Well,
if I can ask, how many stores, just to kind of give, how many stores would carry your rum sticks? Do you know?
Yeah, right now it's about 600.
Wow.
okay.
Wow.
I mean, it might be closer to 700, but one of the things about having distributors is the distributors don't always tell you exactly where everything is,
Yeah.
because that's kind of like they might say intellectual property, I might say that, if I know where they are, I can do a better job supporting them and making sure that there's not like 4 distributors trying to all take to the same location and making everybody mad, at the store. So I like to try to find out. I don't know for all of our distributors. So let's just guess between 600 and 700.
And what are like some of the key chains and accounts? Like, what does that store mix kind of look like? And have you guys found there's like an ideal type of, client and that you're trying to get into on the retail side?
Yeah, so the majority of the customers that buy on our website are women. I think it's almost 80%. And that's really valuable to know because oftentimes jerky is sold in what my wife might call an excessively macho branding.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
skulls and crossbones, and it's all black, and there's Harley Davidson motorcycles and cowboys with long beards. And, my wife goes through that section and she's like, I'm just not feeling at home here. This is not the branding that whispers to me, reach out and put this in the shopping cart.
Hmm.
So when you look at our branding is right in the middle. It's very neutral. We want it to be appealing to moms, who are putting this in kids' lunch boxes. They want to feel really, proud that they're taking care of their families in the way that their conscience, asks them to. That's a lot of our customers right now. As far as data off of our website goes, now in grocery stores, we don't exactly know, who's
Yeah.
doing buying. But I will say that we just launched in Sprouts Market.
Uh-huh.
There's about 390 some odd stores in 23 states, mostly in the southern states. And that's a really great thing. We just got into Market of Choice in Oregon. There's another significant footprint there. We'll be going for Natural Grocers, which is a nationwide
Yep.
store chain, I should say. HEB in
Yeah.
Texas.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We're going for them. We're considering Whole Foods Market, but and I guess this brings me to one of my points is they're not all the same. When we start rattling off all these stores, each one of I shouldn't say stores, I should say chains.
Danes. Yeah.
Each chain is a different chess piece on the chessboard. And you really have to talk to a lot of people before starting to make sure that you are committing to moving the right chess piece. And this is where farmers don't always know that. My favorite Gabe Brown quote, or one of my many favorite Gabe Brown quotes, is if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. If you want to make big changes, you have to change the way you see things. So this is how a lot of the farm businesses that I'm familiar with have started. They started in wholesale because they were just changing the way they do things. They were taking everything to the grain elevator. They were
Yep.
taking everything to the sale barn. What's another single source buyer that can take a high percentage of your inventory off your hands when you want them to? And that's why I think farmers gravitate towards wholesale sometimes in the beginning, because they're not changing the way they see things, like, and that's how I started. I'm a little embarrassed to say, in 2017, 2018, I would just call stores and I'd get in and it felt like a sale barn sale. I would make the delivery, drop it off, not give any support, not give a lot of communication, call them back when I had a lot of inventory, I was ready to move. And that, my friends, is the wrong way to go into wholesale.
What
So
what's you're saying the different retailers and retail chains are like chess pieces. Can you unpack that a little bit more of, okay, what have you learned about which chains to work with, why, some pros and cons, and maybe some mistakes or
Yeah.
many disasters or fires that have happened with a different retailer?
Yeah. So, since we're pretty cautious with spending money, we usually stay away from chains that have a high cost of entry. When you offer a free fill to a grocery store chain, you're usually offering one, small carton of your product, of each SKU, of each flavor, whatever. You're offering one of those to each store for free.
uh,
Then, if you're not delivering direct, there's a lot of legwork with the distributors. You
and
know,
is
the,
that free fill? Is that a standard ask for some of these major retailers and chains to get in the door that you're competing with other competitors?
yeah. So a lot of them do have that free fill. And what I really like to encourage farmers to understand is you can challenge on any front. You might just not get your way, you know, but
Mhm.
just because, somebody in a suit and a tie in an office somewhere tells you something, you are still the master of your next words. So whatever the next words out of your mouth are, you need to be seeing yourself as a person in a position of authority, at least in your own life, and beyond that, in the situation that you have placed yourself in. So they can say, we would like a free fill. And in conversation with your accountant, based on your forecasting, which is what I like to call your best educated guess, you base that yes or no on that information. You look at your cash flow, you look at what's going on in your banking, you look at your proposed forecast. How quickly can you turn that around? Your cost of goods sold relative to your, wholesale price. None of this should sound overly complicated. What I should say is, if it sounds like there's a lot of moving pieces, there are, but a good bookkeeper is going to sort through that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Farmers really, I really like to say farmers need to delegate. I used to work with a distributor back in the Midwest, an awesome guy, and we were talking about the work we do. I don't remember how it came up, but he said, John, my responsibility is to delegate. If I can delegate something, it is my duty to delegate that thing. Just to say that again, it is my duty to delegate that thing.
Well, I think this is what kind of makes you guys different than a lot of farms that are out there. Is a lot of us who get into this world don't enjoy leadership, delegation, and then things on the marketing, sales, negotiation side. That's not typically where we want to live. But it makes you guys a little bit different. So, like going back to just you know, um, having control over your next words in those conversations and you guys looking at the financials. And if it doesn't work to do a free fill, how often do you see that you guys still have a success rate and win a deal and get in a store when, that's just something that doesn't pencil out for you?
Yeah. If it doesn't look like it's going to pencil out, our next words are no, thank you, because another thing that I learned from another farmer is that when you say no to a bad deal, you win.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yep.
right. So, and you have to do that because there's going to be a lot of people offering you bad deals.
But
They've done the math.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's the thing.
Right.
You don't, if in order for you to know if it's a good or a bad deal or know what your next word should be, having done the math and kept track of your your finances and record keeping. That's how you develop. We talk about it around here. We call it price conviction. Like if
Mhm.
you have to have conviction around your price, and for any type of negotiation.
Yeah, well, and I think I've heard it said that like when you say no is sometimes where the negotiating actually starts. But like, have you guys found that? Have very many retailers had some give when it comes to an ask like that, or is that usually just a deal breaker and you guys got to look at the next partner who doesn't have a structure like that?
No, you can say no, and I don't really know what percentage of the time that shuts the deal down, but it's irrelevant,
Hmm.
because my responsibility is to make good financial and environmental decisions for the welfare of my family.
Yep.
So when I say no, I'm not going to offer that free fill because of these reasons. We also kind of have to just hold in the light the people that we're negotiating with, because in order for them to be good at their jobs, they have to apply pressure to whoever they're talking to in a positive way.
Yep.
So I always enter all negotiations with whoever I'm talking to. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're a wonderful person who's trying to be good at their job. And guess what? I'm good at my job too. They're not the only one who's done the math. So with that in mind, oftentimes what I'm going to be managing for is if it becomes more intense, shall we say, and it's never really intense, but let's just say that the ante gets keep going up. What I am doing is managing for softening the heart of the opponent which I'm negotiating with. Um, and what that means is you do a lot of saying back what you hear them say, because human
Mhm.
communication is so fickle. I've had a couple of times in deals where we said no, and then that was the end of the deal. And like 3 days later, I thought to myself, did he mean, you know what I mean? Like it was like he was saying what he was thinking, and it was reasonable, and I was interpreting those words the wrong way. I didn't say it back. And then I can call him back and be like, because we're still on good terms. I'm just, hey, I think I understand where you're coming from now. I've had an epiphany. The little light bulb turned on. Is this what you meant? And I find
Yep.
those words to be invaluable. Is this what you're saying? Or, you know, um, just trusting in the humanity of everyone on the stage, if you will. And
Yep.
if they offer you a deal that's not in your best interest, it's usually best to just not say no, because once you've said no, like you can't really count on them to be negotiating on your behalf. So like you could say that won't work for me because I'm doing this to steward creation, to take care of the ecosystem and watershed I live in, and to provide for my family. If I say yes to that deal, I'll have to cut a corner on one of those things, and my mission statement, my conviction to my mission statement doesn't allow me to cut those corners.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
I can
So with
tell you
yeah.
you've I can tell that you've honed like some of these just it's a muscle and a skill set. Are you doing all the sales and business development, or have you delegated some of that to any of the distributors and the because I know a lot of distributors will have sometimes they're just wheels on your boxes, other
Yeah.
times they're more than that. Are you working with distributors that are doing some of the sales on your behalf?
Our distributors don't do sales. They're just the wheels on the bus. We're currently in UNFI and KHE, which are the two biggest in the natural channel. And we're also in about a half a dozen New England distributors, which are all really great.
Do you go through distributors for all retailers, or are there some where you inject into a distribution center that's owned by the retailer?
We're not doing that right now. I would love to do that because the distributors, and everybody knows this, common knowledge that the distributors that we work with They do a good job at getting the product there, but there might literally be 20 opportunities for a $200 deduction, on if I mean, if your paperwork isn't taped on the door-facing side of the pallet when it gets to the distribution center, you get dinged for that. Or if the warehouse doesn't put the right number of master cases, I mean, there's a lot. If the truck has to wait for more than 2 hours, it's really a lot to navigate. So for that reason, um, we don't do sales with our distributors. We simply want the simplest strategy for movement.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
we siloed sales on another front. So we have an in-house chief of sales. His name is Wayne. He's been in the industry, his whole life. He is like the sales guru in my world. If ever I'm like, is it a good deal or a bad deal? I can't tell. He just immediately is like, yes, or no. And it's like, I just take this deep sigh of relief.
Is he
Uh,
on your like team full time in house, or is that like a fractional consultant?
yeah, fractional consultant.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's really worth it. It's really
yeah, well,
worth
how
it.
does that work? Is he like going into conversations with you, or is he somebody that you're kind of like it's on the back end behind the scenes, consulting you on the structure of a deal and preparing for some of those calls?
He shows up on the calls so that he can hear the exact words that are spoken by the other team, shall we say.
Hmm.
And then you get a lot of human communication is not present in an email. It's and you sense things like where is the urgency, where is the
Yeah.
priority, how firm are they, you know what I mean? And you don't really get that in email. So he shows up and listens. He connects us with influential people who can help with
Yeah.
various elements
Yeah.
of the job. And
Ha-
then we recently hired our first out-of-house sales team. It's a team of 25, believe it or not. They're national and they're working to essentially get us on the grocery store shelves everywhere.
So they're
Okay.
they're are they generating leads that will hand off to you,
Hmm.
or are they completing the actual sales cycle?
So what they do is they create appointments that get me in front of the
Mm.
people who make the decisions.
Okay.
And then we have a long stack of paperwork which they compiled based on information that I gave them. It's pricing, it's dimensions and barcodes and pallet sizes and shipping averages and temperature, ranges. I mean, it's all kinds of images. It's really a stack of papers. But they made that,
Okay.
and then what I do is they schedule calls for me, and then I get on those calls and jump up and down on my tail like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh and just get super excited and talk about what it means to be a ninth generation family farmer and my children are the 10th generation and we want 20 more, and here's how we're going to do it and here's why your customers are gonna fall all over themselves to lay hands on what we make.
So
You
is
know,
that team like specifically focused on like I call it outbound, where they're lead generation, getting you guys appointments to, talk to qualified people, try getting more stores. So then like after you close a new deal and when it comes to the ongoing relationship, are you
yep,
managing that? Someone on the team managing that?
yeah. So someone on the, they manage a lot of it. We've
Okay.
outsourced a lot. With that, and that's great because I'm pretty clear on what I'm good at. What I'm good at is um, explaining why let's say it this way, sharing passion. I love to share my passion for touching the earth for a living, to making nutrient dense food, healing ecosystems, providing healthy animal protein. Like I love to do that. But you know what I'm not good at is I am no good at all on the follow-up and the record keeping and dissecting the math. So they're actually going to do that in combination with an accountant and a bookkeeper.
Okay.
And
Yep.
then what I do is once a week, I meet with the accountant and I get the lowdown. And I prepare questions and I say, next time we meet, I want you to answer these 3 questions. And then we show up and they give me the answer to those 3 questions. And then I ask my next 3 questions. That's how the information cycle works, with accounting and bookkeeping. On the other hand, I'm going to meet with one of those 25 people at least once a week. They're going to give me the lowdown. So, what am I doing? I'm kind of a central point in the information stream, where I'm going to be like balancing our appetite for risk with our margin at a certain account, with the likelihood of landing it, with the cost of doing business and free fills if there are any. And I kind of synthesize all that together into a document. And then I share that with my wife, whose name is Holly. Holly is the CEO. I am not the top dog around here. She is the CEO. Her brain is wired way better for things like long-term strategy, strategic partnerships. I'm the operations officer, you
Okay.
know. So if we were a car, we say she's the high beams and I'm the low beams,
Mhm.
right? I'm
Mhm.
sequencing a million small tasks that allow the big picture vision to successfully and efficiently come to
Yep.
fruition.
Yep. Well, I know we'll want to dig in more to kind of the larger team, how you guys have decided to divide and conquer roles, but you're talking a little bit about your passion. Let's go back to the origin story. We talk a little bit about business today. You mentioned ninth generation. Who has somebody done the ancestry work on that? Because what's that taking us back to? Is that like the 1500s or
1732, baby.
okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I've heard a number of stories. I don't know that any of them have been proven. One of the stories is that the first Arbuckle actually, I'm sorry to say, but killed an English army officer.
Okay.
We were from Scotland, so
Okay.
that guy said the wrong thing to him. and he was branded with an M, and
Oh wow.
there were a couple of boats, in the harbor, at Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland. We were sheep farmers, about 30 kilometers east of Edinburgh. We were coming from a small town called Lanarkshire. And one of the boats was, bound for Australia, and the other one was bound for America. And as fate would have it, that Arbuckle was essentially deported from Scotland for being a troublemaker, and was one step away from becoming an Australian.
Oh, man, so 9 generations. What kind of pressure does that create to continue with the family legacy and farming? Has that always been in your blood, or is it something that you had to learn?
Yeah. So looking back, I spent my early adult life guiding wilderness adventure trips. I
Okay.
spent 12 years or 10 years guiding multi-day whitewater rafting trips. I guided in 10 countries,
Wow.
South America, parts of Asia, all over this country, all of Central America and Canada, and I just wanted to go on adventures. I never wanted to be far from the earth. I wanted to be looking at the earth like my dad did, making decisions, based on the information I was receiving from the land. And that's how I did it. When I met my wife Holly, we decided that raising kids on a farm was what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to my roots, in that I had always had the farming thing in the background,
Yep. Okay.
but she kind of
So
brought it to the foreground.
so I'm sure you guys kind of did all sorts of things with the farm in the early days, but like what's the origin of the meat stick, like the Singing Pastures brand? Whose idea was that to come together, and how do you guys see that as identify it as an opportunity?
Well, let's see, in 2016, we were still going to a lot of farmers markets. You know, we were selling to restaurants. We were predominantly a egg laying hen operation.
Okay.
You know, and we had a vehicle that we had converted into a giant cooler, and it ran on French fry grease. And we drove it all over the state of Missouri, delivering eggs to Hy-Vees and everywhere, grocery stores, restaurants. We started to move into frozen pork. We were still doing farmers markets in addition to that. That was kind of what I did on the weekdays. On the weekends, I was going to farmers markets.
Uh-huh.
And I think we had just put up a website. It was very primitive. And I started going to Weston Price conferences. You know, I don't know if you've heard of Weston Price. It's
Yep.
kind of nutrient dense food advocacy, raw milk
Mm-hmm.
advocacy. And I started going to those, and I came back from one of those with an idea, and I was like, you know, there is a million beef sticks out there. You know, and there's a couple of turkey sticks. There aren't any pork sticks. I haven't seen any pasture-raised pork sticks. Now, this is where I kind of mess up the numbers, but I remember the gist of it. So between 2007 and 2014, grass-fed beef, the sales in America graph just goes vertical.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a 30,000% increase, but I mean, it's stupid. It's absurd. And then we started talking to people, and they said, well, you should look at customer customer reference surveys. You know, what are the customers asking for? And it turns out that people had already done that. And all those people who wanted grass-fed beef also wanted pasture-raised pork. You know, they were associating the two. There were three big drivers. You know, it was good for the earth, good for the person, and good for the animal.
Mm-hmm.
And the real driver of those three, in my mind, is good for the person, because that's what's in it for me. You know,
Yeah.
this
Yep.
fit my health and my family's health immediately.
Where did you
Um,
get access? Just curious, like data like that, in order to help you guys make that decision.
Yeah. So I'm also going to say that when we started doing this, I had no knowledge of business transactions whatsoever. What I had inherited an excellent work ethic from my father, and I had seen him working on the computer. That's it. I didn't know anything at all about business. And I became a regular installment at the Small Business Administration headquarters in our town. I was in there twice a week with scheduled meetings for an hour. And I think by this point, I've had 450 mentorship classes with mentors in the industry, or with small business administration counselors, or there's local government oftentimes has small business support, and there's usually a couple of retirees who were very good at what they did, and now they're willing to share that. And I relentlessly hounded those people. And that's where we started getting, not one of them didn't say, don't look at your numbers. Every single one of them was like, the numbers are how you keep score at a basketball game, and your farm is not any different. Don't think it's different.
Yeah.
If you're not keeping score, the player is. Maybe that's good for you, and maybe that's not. So we really wanted to first develop financial literacy revolving around our spreadsheets, and second, we wanted to not make something because we thought it was neat. We wanted to make something because the category manager at a grocery store, when I would go to those grocery stores, I would try to pitch what I had with me, and then I would ask, what can't you keep on the shelf? What is really hot? What's trending?
Yep.
And I'd say, okay, in 6 months, can I write up a memorandum of understanding that if I do this in 6 months, you'll be agreeable to selling it and putting me on the shelf, So that's how we started to get customer preference survey information. Is the Small Business Administration told us that it existed, and then they told us where to go look for it, and then we did go look for it.
So, am I understanding that right? Where you guys kind of validated the demand of what retailers were looking for through conversation before officially kind of deciding to go out and create the product?
Yeah, so you can do a lot of that, and we just call it doing our due diligence, on a product. We're going to do a lot, and we're going to get a lot of people. If we were going to make, I would not make a new product without knowing that I was going to make a certain amount of margin off of its creation. And when
Mhm.
I say knowing, that's kind of like knowing with like a little K, because you don't really know until you've got the check.
Actuals. Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
But so there's always going to be a leap of faith, but you can do an educated leap of faith, or you can do an uneducated leap of faith, and educated always pays better.
Was there a certain point in time where you guys felt like that you had a big breakthrough? Maybe it was landing your first big customer where you kind of knew that you guys had a real opportunity here to scale something?
Yeah, there's been a several consecutive ones like that, and every time we landed a new account, we hired a new person,
Hmm.
because when I went to, was it 2017 that you guys hosted a understanding agriculture
Yes.
class?
That sounds about right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So when at that event, one of the things, Blaine, you said is the right person unlocks the door. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but he said if you have the right person in the right spot, miraculous things happen.
Yeah, I think I a lot of times say we can look at our revenue charts over the years, and when we have those spikes, those years that really have a spike or a couple of years, almost for every one of those, we can tie back a strategic hire
Yeah,
for that
Yep.
or a strategic partnership.
absolutely. And I really took that statement to heart. And our last hire was a data analyst.
Okay.
Okay.
Our last, and like I would almost like to see all medium-sized farms, have, like, I wonder if we could just daydreaming here. I wonder if we could get a data analyst with a background, like as a CFO, or not a CFO, but like some sort of accounting, and we could share that data analyst among 30 farms, because most farms don't need their own. Most farms aren't
Yep.
launching in sprouts or something, but at the same time, most farms are using their land base as collateral for loans. You know what I mean? So like there's an element of risk in that we should have oversight. We can't expect the farmers to know how to fix the plumbing and do veterinary work and fix the tractors and get everything. You know what I mean? Like you got to ask for help. Farming is not the Lone Ranger. High quality of life farming is not the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
So that's where I think it would be kind of fun to share a data analyst or
Yeah.
a fractional
You might,
CFO.
I gotta say you could be the catalyst because we've been having lots of conversations about this. How like one of our next hires has got to be a data analyst. We've got the great accounting team, controller, CFO, and we've even got the software engineers who's been enough to get us by. But going really deep into some specific key metrics to help you drive decisions. So many of like the marketing decisions that we're making, a lot of times are based off your gut, based off of personal preferences, and as the team starts to grow a lot of times you'll get competing personal preferences. We've been dealing with a lot of that lately when it comes down to make a decision. And,
Yeah.
commonly we're saying, well, what's the way to cut through all that? And it's going down to look at the numbers, look at the data, look at what you're seeing from your customers to be able to make a decision here. So you guys are ahead of us on that front. So that's really cool to see.
Probably the only front.
Well, I was just gonna speaking of like being ahead on fronts. I mean, I think your branding is just I think the branding is awesome. So I know that great branding doesn't just kind of happen. Can you just talk a little bit about, okay, are you working with an agency for that branding piece? And is that Holly working with them? Like who's driving that? Because I can tell like someone is obsessing over branding, packaging, messaging. It's there's a ton of thought into that.
Yeah, so that is the thing that I am the least knowledgeable about. I like to say I make what's in the packaging, and my wife creates, what's on the packaging.
Yep.
Yep.
So this is where I have to acknowledge my strengths and weaknesses. Like, when they show me 20 different, possibilities for what our next, label is going to look like, or our next bacon sticker, or our next, snack stick carton, it seriously all looks the same to me. Like, I think they're in the process of removing my ability to vote on packaging material.
So
That's
so
probably for the best.
is that like a specialized agency that serves CPG
Uh,
brands specifically?
No. So, Holly, my wife, leads packaging and copywriting on packaging. And then our next most recent hire was a data analyst. Our most recent hire was a marketing person.
Okay.
And it's all still family. I feel really lucky that we have so many talented people in our family, or we have access to those talented people. And I'm sure you guys, feel the same way
Yep.
in your family. But so the marketing person works with Holly, and she's a young woman. I think she's 25, and is extremely tech savvy and can run all sorts of programs and do all kinds of graphic design. And they build it, and then Holly talks about what's working for her and what's not working for her.
Yep.
And then the last step is we have a board of advisors, and the board of advisors has been high level CPG people in a variety, of settings. And it's really important to have folks like that. Without folks like that, it's really hard to do due diligence, on something. So, Holly and Becca, put together new packaging options, and then we bring it before our board of advisors, and we get their 2 cents worth. And then oftentimes, we'll try to generate leads with it. We can put that on social media and say, hey, do you guys like this? And get some engagement, or you can
Mhm.
share it with your next 3 top target grocery store chains and say, and if nothing else, you're just getting in their inbox. They will have heard of you. That, it's just like another form of marketing.
Yeah.
What do you think of this? We still can change something if you like it. Get their buy-in. You get their buy-in, you're one step closer to being on their shelf.
Well, if you want to go down this path, it just seems like such an important area to not shortchange because, what's very different than what we're doing is, with e-commerce and the website where there's a lot more digital real estate to communicate the story behind the product and try to sell it. Where if it's on a grocery store shelf, you've got the label that you're for the most part working with. But you mentioned the board of advisors, and I think it's beneficial for the everyone listening to just unpack that a little bit deeper of what's that structure like? Where did you get the idea, and kind of how are they involved with the decision making?
Yeah. So I think there's 3 or 4 people on our board of advisors. They've all been, presidents or vice presidents of larger CPG companies at the time that those companies were sold, were acquired by a larger entity.
Hmm.
So they definitely, were knowledgeable on all elements of things, from packaging to operations to, margin control to, what it's like, selling to big grocery stores. And they've all got war stories about when things didn't work. They've all got, success stories about when things did work. And how did we find those people? I'm going to speak very frankly about how we found those people, and I hope everybody listening does this. You find somebody who you really resonate with in the industry. And it doesn't have to be, in fact, it's oftentimes better if there's a shade of separation between you and
Yeah.
them. For example, I would not call another snack stick company and say, how do you manage inventory, and would you share that software with me? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Where if I call a pretzel company or a hummus company or a macaroni and cheese company or, local toothpaste company or a chocolate company, you know what I mean? Like, we're all manufacturing something. Like, the laws of the universe apply to all of us equally. You talk to those people and you're like, hey, you trust in the humanity of the exchange. I'm going to tell you about my family. I'm going to tell you about my goals. At the end of that, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, nuts and bolts about how we should go about attacking a certain problem. If I do that with that person, at the end of the call, I might say, hey, the next time a question comes up for me, can I ping you? Can I ask your opinion? And I'm really happy to share, a bunch of snack sticks with your office. I'll send it to you. You bring it into the office, say, hey, here's a contribution to my lunchtime snack, refrigerator.
Yep. Yep.
There's an exchange. It's not, regenerative agriculture is not simply about taking information or taking resources. It's about sharing, the goodness of the world. So I want to
Yep.
share the goodness of the world in exchange for that person's experience. If I do that 2 or 3 times over a quarterly period, I'll oftentimes, finish the last call by saying, I really appreciate you mentoring me. Thanks for being a mentor. Would you mind, how would you feel? Where's your level of comfort on continuing that in exchange for a regular subscription, a quarterly subscription to whatever
Yep.
you want on our website?
Yep. Uh-huh.
And then, maybe once a month we'll talk for 20, 30 minutes, and I'll send you my questions the day before, and, we
So,
get on a Zoom call and I'll show you my, whatever I'm doing. Let's work through an inventory issue, or is this grocery store asking me something that's reasonable, or is it really off base? Is it really unreasonable? Like, we just do that once
yeah,
a week, once a month for, 20 minutes, but I do that with 4 people.
you've
There's a
so
lot of information
I love
exchange.
how resourceful you are with this. I mean, it's like a network that you're building, and we do some of the same things where we know there's these go-to people. A lot of it's on regulation. You run into a regulation issue or a labeling issue. A lot of times, there are relationships where, yeah, it doesn't make sense to have a formal, ongoing retainer with. But man, when you need a call with those people, you
Mhm.
need a call with them, and we do the same thing. We send them a box of meat, some
Yeah.
logo wear, some
Yeah.
merchandise, and they're tickled pink,
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah. People love to contribute to farms and families and people taking care of the earth. Like, we've got a lot going for us that I'm not above leveraging. And I hope the people out there listening aren't either.
That's awesome. Well, another thing I think for people listening, that we just heard a lot of through our experience of doing some consulting with other farms and the experience with Grace Cart selling the software is it feels like early in someone's direct marketing journey when it comes to finding outlets for the products that they're raising and growing is trying to decide whether to go deep down the wholesale route or direct to consumer, and you guys have obviously chosen wholesale CPG. What do you feel like are um, benefits to that versus direct to consumer? Are there things that make that unique that you just don't quite get on the direct to consumer side?
Probably not.
Okay.
To be honest, we are actually, um, what I'm noticing is most of the farms that have turned into businesses that sell a product, whether it's Seven Sons or White Oak Pastures, or, a lot of people in our space, they all started out with a large percentage wholesale. Like, I know you guys did a lot with eggs
Yep.
and did a lot with Whole
Yeah.
Foods. I think
Yep.
that's an awesome, place to be. And everybody that I know, the more they get established, the more they generate some margin, the more they start talking, they get out of this echo chamber that farmers like to live in, myself included. We get out of that echo chamber, we start talking, we start sharing information with a larger group of people. Everybody goes direct to consumer, and we're seeing that. 3 years ago, we were doing like 1.5% of our revenue was coming from online. We are hoping that it's going to be 8% by the end of this year. And we're just going
Okay.
to keep going that direction. While we are excited, we feel like we have developed a skill set in
Mhm.
wholesale. And with that skill set was an investment in time and energy. And since we have that, there's no use letting go of that
Yep.
unless we had a good reason. We don't have a good reason to yet. So
Yeah.
we're going to stick with that because we've developed that skill set. I think, for a lot of farmers, if you have the opportunity to go direct to consumer, and there is a real secret sauce to that that's not my skill set. The data analyst combined with, his wife, his name is Andrew. His wife is Becca. She's into the marketing. My wife, Holly, is also into the marketing stuff. I do a little bit of content creation, but now, I mean, like we're starting things like paid ads and geo-targeted ads and search engine optimization based on blogs that I write, and continuing to support our Instagram and Facebook stuff, and doing collaborative giveaways with other regenerative entities. Like there's a lot to that,
Yep.
and in my humble opinion, I would rather be as we're driving hard into the direct to consumer space. I think a lot of farmers would benefit from that. But, I mean, I'm 48. Like I didn't grow up with screens. It feels somewhat foreign to me. I walk around the farm with a clipboard in my hand and write things with a pen. My son laughs at me mercilessly when I'm taking my notes on a clipboard. And that said, I love to call places. I love to share the passion with
Yep.
places. And that's how we got into wholesale.
Yeah.
All the wholesale accounts, excluding Sprouts, are, accounts that I landed from having the habit of cold calling a new place every day.
Yeah.
Well, and that just
Yeah,
brings up something that's so important, I feel like, is knowing what you're good at and what you actually enjoy and deciding to focus there. And it seems like that's something that you have just been able to identify, because you don't want to build a business that you don't enjoy. You don't
yeah,
enjoy what you're going to be doing along the way, or else you're not going to be able to get to that scale when you can start to hire people and delegate more.
yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
another big thing that stands out to me that we've kind of just noticed in our experience of dabbling into wholesale versus retail is the defensibility of like your revenue on the wholesale side is a lot lower maintenance once you're in the door.
Mhm.
When we think about some of the ongoing work that it takes to maintain our business with Whole Foods, it's not a lot. I don't know if you guys have found that as well. When we compare it to maintaining, revenue coming in from customers on the e-commerce side of business, you got to get, new things all the time introduced to them as far as giving them a compelling reason to buy. We've done a lot with subscription management for the direct consumer side of the business. So the retention of the revenue feels like that's a potential benefit of wholesale, just because it's once an account is in and your product's on the shelf, that's not happening all the time where products are just getting replaced
Yeah,
as
I hear
often.
you. I hear you. And to that, I guess I would add that I advocate managing wholesale in a more similar way to what I imagine direct to consumer. Like twice a month, all of the people who write me purchase orders get an email, maybe once a month. They all get an email with pictures of our farm, the changing seasons. I start out the day, I do 2 hours of conservation work every day, planting trees, making compost, eradicating, pulling invasives up, mowing invasives, fixing fence. We leave a lot of milkweed for monarch butterflies. You know what I mean? There's a million things. And once a month or so, when I send all of our category managers that, it's almost like a newsletter. but I'm not sending it to all of them at the same time. I'm sending it to each one of them individually because there's only about, 25 of them.
Right.
Okay.
I can cut and paste, a similar one, but a little bit of personalization and then a couple of farm images. I do a lot of that. I'm managing, that is a relationship,
Mhm.
and that's what I think is phase one of getting away from the sale barn is, managing the relationships with your category managers as if they were important, you know, as if you knew that one day a competitor would approach that person, as if you knew that one day there would be a category review and
Yep.
you would be reviewed. None of this should come as a surprise. Those things are all going to happen. And when they do, we would like to think, and this is not meant to be, if it's purely transactional, you lose a little bit of the pixie dust. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you are connecting with people, like trusting the humanity of the engagement, of the interaction, you're showing yourself as a human being with a heart and soul and goals and dreams. And, thank you for helping, our farm related dreams come true. In D2C marketing, I'm told we're always trying to make the customer the hero of the story.
Yep.
Yep.
Grocery is no different, like we're maintaining a relationship, and we're just I don't know how to say it. We are sharing what we're doing and we're making our category manager the hero of the story.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So that's a little bit of what you're doing to maintain engagement with the category manager who are buying the product. Is there anything that you and the team are doing to help drive like revenue per store versus like just going out to get new accounts and get into new stores? Like I know
Yeah.
there's like product demos and stuff, anything of that nature?
Yeah, I have to say that you guys at Seven Sons have given us a lot of pearls of wisdom. And another one of those pearls of wisdom was don't get new acquisition, what's the word? Colorblind, or it's not that, it's
Oh yeah, what was that? I can't even remember the exact analogy
yeah.
that we used for that too, but
It's
yeah,
when the only thing you're thinking of is landing new accounts and you have stopped thinking about driving
yes.
sales with the customers you already have.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So say the question for me one more time. Just want to make sure I get it
Yeah,
right.
just as far as like anything that you're doing to drive revenue per store. Like once you get the account, yeah, what are you doing for I call it expansion revenue, meaning you've
Yeah.
got the existing account. How do you get additional revenue with them?
So when we like to think that category managers and their employees who write purchase orders are data driven, but I'd say more than half of the time that's not always true. They're extremely busy.
Yeah.
These folks are
Yes.
overwhelmingly busy,
Hmm.
and the way to get purchase orders is to ask for them in a very gentle, humble way. Like when I send these, you know what they say about email marketing? It's give, 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 ask. Our emails
Yep.
to our category managers aren't any different. Here's a picture of our biggest pig. He weighs 800 pounds. Holy moly.
Yep.
And you wouldn't believe how many emails I get. His name is Mr. Wrinkles, and he is a tank, and like here's a new group of baby pigs in the springtime, like, who are born into a big patch of wildflowers. Like, people just here's us, making snack sticks, and we have our white coats on, our hairnets, and here's what it looks like when we're actually in the plant. That's give, 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 and then like the next one, might be, the next one might be, hey, our forecast, might be wrong, but it shows that you guys might be running low. Could you mind checking,
Uh-huh. Yep.
your inventory,
Yep.
and actually, we get so many purchase orders from just sending emails in the spirit of friendship. It's not meant to be transactional,
Hmm.
but it also can't be ignored that the people I'm emailing are so busy that
Yep.
you might get forgotten. So the metaphor that I oftentimes hear, can you hear the siren in the background?
Just barely. You're fine.
Do
Yep.
you want me to close my window?
You're fine. No, I ain't even
Okay.
hear it anymore.
Okay. So we just imagine, there's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but the fingernails on the chalkboard are sent home.
Yep.
You
Yep.
you want to be, the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. You don't want to be fingernails on the chalkboard.
Yep. Yep.
You know.
Ye- Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what our always have been our most converting marketing campaigns, which are just the helpful reminder to see if somebody still needs product again. Back when we were doing buying clubs and delivering to remote pickup locations, we had an automated email every single time we went to that delivery location just to make sure people knew we're coming. We won't be back for 6 weeks. Now's your time to get your order. Same thing. That's the heart of what's behind our subscription program for the direct marketing business is people are busy. So, getting them to make a commitment to just, we make it super flexible. They can skip, they can cancel, but when they subscribe, they're going to get a text message in 4 weeks that's just asking them, hey, do you still need this next order? So we're not falling off their radar. I think one thing that people get nervous about when it comes to building a wholesale business is customer concentration. Has that been something you guys have thought a lot about when it comes to key accounts and have you mitigated that to an extent?
I haven't thought about that very much. Tell me
Okay.
more.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
just like
maybe
from,
maybe you could be my mentor.
just like the majority of your business being tied to one account, like Whole Foods, or a third of your business. And if you lose that account, there you go. You've now, if you've made hiring decisions based on that to expand the team and having that account,
Yeah, have
there's
you
risk
been
to
able to
that.
avoid like the scary customers like, oh man, if I lost that one, that would really change our
Yeah.
business? Or do you feel fairly
Diversified.
diversified that
Yeah.
We're diversified now, but they say an expert is a person who's made all possible mistakes in a very narrow field. So,
yep.
not that I think we're experts, but we did make that mistake. And we had one customer that represented something like 75% of our revenue, and we did lose them,
Oh, wow.
Mm.
you know, and
I
and
tell,
that
how'd
was
you
an
get
eye
through that?
opener.
Yeah.
What's that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
How'd
yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah.
get through that?
You make hard decisions sometimes.
Yep.
We cut our own salaries. We watch things very carefully. In one sense, it was a good learning opportunity.
Yep.
And in that we had gotten a little bit too attached to doing things because we thought they were neat, and we weren't measuring their revenue potential or even after revenue, then you have to measure their margin potential. So
Yep.
we had draft horses, and we had all kinds of we had horse-drawn farming equipment, and I was having a good old time, driving my Clydesdales around the farm. And while we decided to sell those horses, we also did a lot of other pruning. We pruned a lot of other stuff back, and as a result, we became a very efficient, margin-driven, budget-driven
Yeah.
Yep.
entity.
Yep.
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 You know, and without that, I may have been a little bit sloppy. I would have liked to think that our human potential is that you can do both. You can have abundance and have a sharp pencil at the same time.
Yep.
In my case, it took losing some of that to sharpen the pencil.
Yeah, I would argue that, if you're trying to get insights and you look back in our past and just look at our revenue chart, like Blaine mentioned, that you can usually identify some key jumps down to some key hires. The next thing that I feel like you can identify on that is usually getting more focused on what you're really good at and saying goodbye to the things that you're not. I think that shows up time and time again on, growth phases that we've had. Is just getting us and the team and all the human capital more focused on a centralized goal, a centralized business. So I think there's a lot to be said there. I want to go now to the future for you guys. What does that look like? Are there any is it doubling down on what you're doing now? Are there any new opportunities that you see with diversifying products, and what do you think about with the future?
Yeah, so we're actually going to put some frozen pork on our website in the fall.
Okay.
We're going to put about eight SKUs of frozen pork on there and see how it's just see what happens. It'll be about 25 pigs worth, and of course, we'll make some snack sticks
Yep.
trim, and we're going to see how that goes. I really think that selling snack sticks and salami and value adds off of our website is really where our future is going. Bone broths, salami, the potential of lunch meat, other flavors of snack sticks. There's rendered lard. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of value adds. And I guess my reason for being attracted to these value adds is one of the ways that we financed Rome Sticks in the early days. And this was kind of in between my delivering chicken eggs, to grocery stores and farmers markets. It was kind of between that and then the time that Rome Sticks was actually able to start offering me a salary. In that time, I worked as a meat processing consultant, and I had largely self-educated, taught myself how to do that, and was really happily surprised to see how big the need for that was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of people who have a background in high-level marketing or finance, or they have access to capital, they have an idea that they're passionate about. So they're kind of like they have those skill sets, but what they were largely unable to do was build a product that could consistently be predicted upon to be consistent and
Yeah.
uniform,
Yep.
yields like this, and have this relationship with the co-manufacturer and the farmer group supplying the raw materials, and then linking that to third-party logistics centers and trucking. And so you can tell I'm an operations guy. Like I really live in the operations side of the business. And so I think I worked for 6 or 7 other businesses as a consultant,
Okay.
and that really helped. So after working with those 6 or 7 other businesses and just solving all kinds of problems, that's the word consultant can mean anything you want it to, but in my case it meant problem solver related to manufacturing meat products.
Yep.
you know
Yep. Yep.
so
Yep.
I really got an excellent education in what can go wrong. They say a smart person learns from his mistakes and a wise person learns from his neighbors.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
I've done both. I like to think I've done both. So after seeing all of that, that's another skill set that I don't want to leave on the table.
Yep.
I really I like helping people make value added products.
Yep. Yep.
Um, you
So
know,
when it comes to scaling the business in the future, are there any like key, I don't know, challenges or ceilings that you guys see that you're gonna have to figure out that you don't have the answers to yet?
we are still a little bit unclear what it's like working with national distributors. There's got to be a way to make that work because I see other places do it. But in one sense, that's faulty logic, because just because other people are doing it, other people might be making bad decisions, and I don't know what their books look like.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm optimistic that we can figure out how to navigate the world of national distribution, but that kind of remains to be seen. I am curious. I mean, the world of wholesale is actually just as big and creative as direct to consumer. I mean, today I called Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops, Harbor Freight,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yep.
all of the local hardware stores. And that's where we've started placing snack sticks most recently. Is the hardware stores and outdoor stores have a higher markup but they also have no cost of entry. So if you
Yeah.
can organize your pricing in such a way that you're giving them a cheaper price than maybe you'd like, but you also don't have to deal with the weirdness of running promotions and
Yeah.
like not
Yep.
knowing how it's going to go and not knowing if the store is actually going to keep all your promotion money and not run a promotion. You know
Yep.
what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Like, so that's one of the creative things that I've been pushing for lately is outdoor stores
Yeah,
and
I didn't think
um,
about that being
hardware.
an opportunity, but now as you say, it seems like an obvious one. But what you guys have with a shelf stable product to be able to diversify outside of just constrained to grocery, frozen and fresh categories. So
Oh
I can
yeah.
see that as a
I mean, so many places, and this probably works for a lot of other things. It's especially convenient for what we're making, but do you know how many KOA campgrounds there are in America?
no.
Tons. Ski resorts,
Yep.
rafting companies, like running shoe stores, national parks. I mean, there's no limit to. I mean, I haven't even. That's just a drop in the bucket of what's possible. Amusement parks. I mean, water slide parks. I mean, you name it. Like,
Yep.
you can place product in a lot of those places.
Do you guys feel like you really have the supply side of the business really figured out and you don't necessarily see that as a constraint to growing? Because it's just something we talk about a lot because we can be, focus in on what we're good at, which we feel like is, helping tell the story of us and the farms that we're working with to consumers. But, continuing to scale supply starts to get tricky the more
Yeah,
scale of product that you're moving. So with you
yeah,
guys, especially having I wouldn't view this as like a nose to tail product where you need to source obviously the right material from the right farms with the right protocols. Like, how do you balance all that?
yeah. So whenever we court a really big customer, we tell them that it is a whole carcass program. Right.
Okay.
And that's the only way to be honest, because the way to burn up your reputation is to overpromise and underdeliver. And being that our farm is built on the generations that came before us and maybe built by the generations that come after me, what I really want, it's okay if something fails. It's okay if your factory burns down. I won't say it's not really okay, but you won't be viewed in a bad light if your factory burns down and you can't fill an order. But if you are moving from a high integrity place, then people are going to see
Yeah.
that without you saying it. If you're moving from a low integrity place, I really think that we see each other's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we know it or not, our intuition is always at work, and sometimes wrongly, but what I want is I want to be moving forward from a high integrity place where I can always deliver on what I've promised, unless something totally out of there's a forest fire that burns our factory down or burns down the warehouse. I just gotta throw yourself on your sword and say, hey guys, like this is what happened.
Yep.
But if we're courting a really big account, I have to tell them that this is a full carcass program, and I'm going to look to your merchandising team to help me move not only our shelf stable products, but I'm going to look for a little bit of support in moving spare ribs, baby back ribs.
Hmm.
And most of the time, I can move bacon, tenderloin, and chops. Like that's not a struggle for me. I mean, three of the places that I consulted with were meat box delivery companies, so I can move the middle meats pretty well. I usually need some help moving the ribs.
Okay.
Um, so I can do that. And that's if it's a big, big, big deal, like um and if it's not, if I am getting into another chain or a region of hardware stores in New England where there are, 300 locations, I can usually balance out the carcasses without making it a whole carcass program.
Okay. Okay. So, and that's
Small and
just,
large settings.
so that's you just moving product and material to just is like Plan B markets, people like branded programs and just contacts that you have to be able to keep the animals in balance.
Yeah, and any business is built on whatever you did beforehand, so
Hmm.
being that I'm a ninth generation family farmer, that helps a lot when I'm working with our supplier groups, because if I look out this window, you can see the pasture raised pigs that I'm raising, and you can probably see the 400 grass fed lamb that we're raising. The grass fed beef cows are not outside the window, but that's all something that I have my hands in, every day. So that's helping build relationships.
Yep.
And then the let's say 4 years that I spent working, as a meat processing consultant, all those places I'm still on good terms with, and I can still move stuff if I need to. I can move a raw material, for a break even cost,
Yep.
so
Yep.
that I can generate margin on my branded product.
Yep.
Well, a consistent theme I keep seeing in this conversation is just your ability to build your network, maintain relationships, and how that has helped you at so many different facets of the business. Well, this has been awesome, John. I really appreciate you jumping on the show to be able to share lessons from what you guys are building. One question I always like to wrap up with is just application for anyone who's listening. So you guys are obviously scaling a heck of a business. What are some, I don't know if it's books, if you're a reader, or maybe some thought leaders that you've looked up to that's made a big impact on your journey and career in business?
I recommend watching YouTube videos written by a really inspirational farm called Seven Sons in Roanoke, Indiana. If you've ever heard of
John
them,
is great
I
at
think you should,
networking, building
Yeah.
you
relationships.
should
You're
look
seeing
them
it
up.
real time.
Oh, that's you guys. I'm sorry, I forgot. So I guess here's what I would say. The regenerative farming element of what we do, you can learn from watching a lot of Gabe Brown videos.
Yep.
I mean, there's no shortage of them. There's no shortage of, I mean, John Kemp, the Amish gentleman,
Yeah.
incredible thinker,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
an incredible philosophy. I mean, there Alan Williams, Ray Archuleta, Donna Kilpatrick, who works in Arkansas. There are some remarkable thought leaders that if you watch 20 minutes of YouTube videos a couple of times a week, and then you practice it, and then just like the Savory Institute says, you practice it with the thought that you're probably messing something up. Look
Yep.
for what you're messing up. Look for what you can improve. If you do that, the farming part will be pretty. They say there's sticky information. There's information that goes in easy. For farmers, learning to be better farmers, that's like eating birthday cake. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
not the hard part of this equation. It's what makes us succeed in a lot of ways. Not the only way, but a big part of it is the administrative professionalism that we bring to our desk.
Yeah.
And while I spend many hours, probably 3 hours a day directly doing farm labor, I can graph my revenue going up in a parallel line to hours spent at my desk.
Yeah.
Yep. I love it.
And I'd like for farmers to realize that possibility, because I started out farming thinking if you're not working with your hands, it's not valuable, and that is not a true statement. So I put that out there. And then I would say that really my soapbox is, if farmers have an accountant, I'd like to see farmers having a 1 hour meeting with their accountant and showing up with prepared questions every single week. I'd like to see that happen. I'd
Yep.
like to see any farm that's making any product to sell in any location to have spec sheets for that product. Spec sheets are just, this is what I'm paying the slaughterhouse or the packer to make. This is what's inside bounds. This is what's outside bound. I'd like to see every single farmer have spec sheets for their finished goods.
Yep.
And I'd like to see written agreements. And I'm not trying to make this sound cumbersome, but like if you don't have a spec sheet and you don't have a written agreement with your strategic partners, whether in most cases, I'm a livestock guy, so most cases that's a butcher shop. You really have to have a written agreement,
Yeah.
and really, I mean, the way to approach stuff like that, it's not necessarily a contract. I mean, it probably won't be legally binding, but we're trusting the humanity of the engagement, right? So we're just imagining that um, when we're making something as complicated as what we all make, whether it's 20 SKUs of meat or value added products, there's opportunity for something to go wrong. And I like everybody in the picture is a good person. I'm really starting out, any conversation believing that with my heart and soul. But we're always going to remember a phone call. If there's wiggle room for interpretation, we're going to remember the agreement in whatever way
Yeah.
serves me.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And every single person who is on the call is going to remember it in the way that benefits them. And so these written agreements, they're not complicated. You can just type them up, and the purpose is, nothing's going wrong right now. This is a great time. There's no tension. This is a great time to say, you're promising to follow my spec sheets. You're promising to get it done with this amount of time. You're promising that your cold chain will be totally on the ball. You're guaranteeing this much shelf life. I'm guaranteeing to you that I'm going to pay you this price to make what's on the spec sheet. I'm going to pay you within this window of time. These are my terms.
Yep.
This is how often I'm planning on processing how much and of what, and bearing in mind that that's subject to the winds of fate, if you will. You know what I mean? You get all that stuff written down, and you're not left holding the bag. If you were to buy, I work with several farmer groups. If I buy trim and it's 10 points of lean to fat, that's going to show up when we dump it on the table, so we can do our sorting and look at it and visually inspect it. Like we're going to see, like there's too much white, not enough red, and if that's the case, we go straight to documentation.
Yep.
We're going to take 20 pictures. We're going to there's usually at a plant, there's a way to do a chemical analysis of fat to lean. We're going to do one of those. And then we're going to write a very humble letter, to a raw materials, to a farmer group. I'm saying, guys, I'm really sorry to say this, but you did not provide,
Yep.
what this
Yep.
spec sheet says you're going to. As a result, I don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
and I love you guys. I care about you guys. I want you to succeed. It's time to go have a long conversation with somebody. And that somebody is not me. So we'll send this wherever you want us. If you want it back, we'll give it back, but
So
go with a blessing,
I
and
I
here's stuff that doesn't work.
I love how practical your advice is, John. I mean, I can think as you're saying this, I can think of several big intersections for us that if we didn't have just an organized, you know, pre-stated expectation that we agreed to, it would have been a very difficult, rough situation for everybody. But just having
yeah.
those conversations and brainstorming, anytime you do a partnership, there is always ways it can go wrong or that something can happen. Just brainstorm as many things as possible you can think of and just spell out if this happens, A, B, and C needs to happen.
Yeah, that's how
And
relationships crash and burn is when you haven't decided on those things up front, and you can see them sometimes get really ugly because it was all left to expectation. So much of what you're describing is just being disciplined and thorough with doing what we call the hard work versus working hard, which I feel
Yeah.
like is an area that you know, as farmers, we miss so many times of doing the working hard work with our hands that is fun and that we enjoy versus hard work of knowing your numbers, getting your agreement started up front, doing the hard follow up to keep relationships engaged. And it's obvious that you guys are really good at doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you. And you guys are a big inspiration for us. And, you know, it's the way that I look at it is I have a job, you know, I don't have a hobby. You know,
yep,
hobbies are all about rainbows and unicorns and ice cream. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just doing the fun stuff, you know, and if someone is independently wealthy and they can just, you know, just do the fun
yeah,
stuff,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
you can live without a job, then, you know, good for you. That's great. You know, but if you are, you know, tasked with providing for a family, and that is your job, then like spending a lot of your day doing something that you do find satisfaction in is very valuable. But don't forget, guys and gals who are listening, that that's not the 100%. Let's hope that that's 60-70%. You
Yeah.
know, but your
Yep.
job as dictated to you from whoever you think is in charge, right, is gonna be that you get to be really good at your job.
Yep.
And one way that you get good at your job is making mistakes. So I encourage everyone to be gentle with themselves and forgiving with themselves and their employees. You know, if mistakes, you know,
Yeah.
are made, that's the pathway to wisdom, you know.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
You know, they say experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. You know,
Uh,
so I mean, just with that in mind, you know, there's going to be 30% of the job that is dictated to you from your boss,
yep.
you know, and your
Yep.
boss is going to be asking you to stretch.
Yep.
So don't be afraid to stretch. Hope it doesn't happen all the time. Hope you get some relaxation time in there. But those three things that I mentioned will go a really long way to
Yep.
being good at the job. You know, 1 hour meeting once a week with an accountant, creating spec sheets for your finished goods and your raw materials, and having written agreements with your strategic partners. If you have
Yep.
those things in place, you have removed a very large element of risk from your life, which might cause you a lot of stress down the
Yeah.
road.
Yep.
Yep. Well said. Well, Blaine, any final burning questions before we wrap this up?
No, John, again, I can see the resilience, that you guys have had to have over the years to build what you guys have built. And yeah, you guys are just inspiration and admire what you guys are doing. So keep up
Uh,
the good work.
John, where
Thank you.
would someone go who's listening find you guys and follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, so we put a lot of new stuff on our website, singingpastures.com. And I'm doing a TikTok channel at my son's
Nice.
behest. I am my last name is Arbuckle. Farmer John was taken, so I'm Farmer Buckle.
Nice.
Go
That was not
follow.
taken. Yeah, you can see that. It's a lot of exploring nature and farming and the relationship between the two. We also have an Instagram and a Facebook page.
Awesome. All right. We'll go check it out. John, we appreciate it again. We'll have to do this again sometime. So thanks
Yeah,
a
thank
lot.
you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.